Hello. Today I will be featuring the first of a couple of upcoming Akizuki commentaries that I've been planning to make. Now, for those that aren't aware, I let my chat decide which ship I should put Admiral Yamamoto on, and people voted overwhelmingly for the Akizuki. So I have unlocked it and I'm leveling, getting some captain points on him. I have a 17-point captain right now, so I'm still missing Adrenaline Rush, which I really like. But other than that, I'm using almost my standard build. I'll go over that later in the vid as usual. Now, this is the first of the series, so to say, and this one is about how you carry when you are the top tier. In this case, it's tier 6 to tier 8 matchmaking, which is by no means guaranteed these days. I have faced significantly more tier 10 than I have faced tier 6, but that's just something you have to get used to. And this is the first one, and here we focus on how we can carry a game when we are the top tier. First of all, when you're at the top tier in the game, that means that there is, especially in the Akizuki, that means that there's no real DD that can take you on in a fight. That means you are the top dog, which is why I have no qualms about pushing C, even though I greatly dislike how passive my team is playing. My Mogami is taking it a long way, my Monarch, my Amagi, they're not really backing me up, so I'm kind of alone in this cap. So I'm playing it very safe in that sense. I'm requesting support, trying to get these battleships to move and pinging them, but they are not being very useful in this sense. So I already angle away because I know there's a DD here. I don't know what else is here. If he has backup, whereas I don't have backup, that means I'm gonna end up in an awkward situation. And I spot the DD at the same time as I spot the Pensacola. So obviously I need to turn away. But the Z23 is pushing me quite heavily, which is of course extremely stupid. Because as I said, Akizuki doesn't fear anyone that's the same tier. The same tier or lower, you have zero fear. I drop my torps, I turn away, and I start disengaging. I stop shooting as well. Now, in situations like this, the best way to deal with German DD that pushes a cap and smokes up is you park outside of his hydro range and you wait for the smoke to run out. Now, however, this guy, I think he wasn't running last stand or something, because he actually ends up eating my torp, which is something you should never do in a Z23. That was just straight up bad play from the enemy DD. But in general, the way to deal with German DDs that push caps like this is when they push you and smoke up, you retreat. You back off, you try to sit inside the cap and contest the cap, but you don't go anywhere near his smoke. Because pushing his smoke means that he has the spotting advantage on you thanks to his hydro, but the great disadvantage of German DDs is that their smoke lasts for a very short duration. So the best way to outplay them in this sense is to just wait out the smoke. It doesn't last long, and once it's out, then you engage him in a fight again. And this time you have the smoke advantage, but in the Akizuki you really don't need it, because as I said, you outgun everyone that's the same tier or lower without any issues. You have Akizuki has always had huge advantages when it comes to firepower and survivability. You have 23k health with the survivability expert, and your DPM in general puts all the other DDs to shame. Of course, your weaknesses are you are incredibly clumsy, you're slow, you turn like garbage, you have a massive turning circle. But this is kind of necessary to balance the DD out, because otherwise the Akizuki would be quite overpowered if it wasn't as clumsy as it is right now. Dropped some torps on the Amagi, hoped to punish him a bit with some AP broadsides, but he started angling away right away. And note though that something capped B, and that something is no longer to be seen. So I'm guessing whatever capped B is pushing north into C, and that means of course there's a DD that's pushing me. So you note the way I'm angled, you should see how I'm glancing that way. Oh, and something is contesting C now. So I know the DD is somewhere over there, and that's why I'm angled the way I am in the smoke. When you shoot in smokes, especially in the Akizuki, you constantly transmit your position because of how fast your fire rate is. So anyone torping you has a very good idea of where they should launch those torps. So when I actually stop shooting now, I instantly start moving, because I'm expecting torps to come in on my last known position, because that DD sailed up from B north to C. He left the cap, but I still know he's somewhere around here. He's somewhere on my left flank, and I want to see what it is. I want to gain the information. Actually, the Z23 was spotted down south, so this means this is a Fubuki. If I can catch this Fubuki out, I can kill him quite easily, in fact. Also, the Pensacola is playing quite passive, The Amagi is playing quite far back, so I'm not that afraid of incoming fire. If something is within 10 kilometers, you kind of want to play it safe in the Akizuki because of how clumsy it is. But when they're playing this far back, then you can be kind of ballsy and you can kind of push in and take the fight to them. Some preemptive torps launched at the Amagi in case he keeps pushing, and of course to help out my team in general. But my goal here is absolutely to find the Fubuki and see if I can kill him off. If he would have gone south, my Huang He would have spotted him, so he's somewhere around here. And as I mentioned, that actually leads to finding him. He doesn't have the HP perk, which means he's a very vulnerable DD to my firepower. However, he was already turning away, and as I open fire, he turns away even sharper. And I cannot push in. I cannot push in and chase him. Not just because he has a lot of backup down there, but if you look at the minimap, you note that we are in a very bad position when it comes to dodging shells. We have enemies north, south, and to our east. Sorry, to our west. One of the torps hit the Amagi. So even though we want to kill the Fubuki, pushing deeper than I was right there would have put me in a position where I was surrounded. And you can't dodge shells when you're surrounded, because you turn to dodge one shell, you just end up giving full broadside to another guy shooting. So ultimately, you put yourself in a terrible position. So instead, I push north and I help my Amagi with the Ioba. Note that if someone gives you broadside, doesn't matter cruiser or battleship, you want to use the AP on this ship. You want to aim very high on the ship, like almost on the deck line, because you want to hit both the superstructure. You kind of want to hit the superstructure in general to get those pens. But if you aim at the correct spot, you can see just how much damage the ship can pump out. If you hit the turrets, not really much damage at all, but once you hit the superstructure, you get these big chunks of damage, and that's basically what you want to be farming when playing the ship. I'm trying to help him out, get this guy killed as soon as possible, and he's dead. Potential torps coming his way, I hope he's aware of it, but now we realize that we are starting to get outnumbered here. Most of the team has died up at sea, and they have 5 people down here. The team is getting something small done down south. In fact, they seem to be struggling down south as well, so we need to somehow make something happen. And well, sea is being capped again. We already know the Pensacola isn't there. That's the one with the latest patch. The Pensacola would have the concealment to be able to push the cap. The Queen Elizabeth isn't fast enough to have made it into sea yet, so that leaves only the DD in the cap. So hopefully my Amagi understands that there's potential torps coming in from sea. In fact, if I was, you have to think of if you were the enemy DD. If you were the enemy DD, what's the best target when you're capping sea? The Amagi, of course. So I am very aware that there might be incoming torps coming from this direction, and that's why I'm angled the way I am, and that's why I'm pushing this way as fast as possible. Not just to scout the possible torps coming towards my Amagi, but also, of course, to protect the cap, and more importantly, to kill the Fubuki so he can't cause any more havoc. The Amagi is fleeing as he should be, but the angle he's taking, I hope I can spot the torps. I'm kind of trying to see them, and I do in fact spot the incoming torps. So now I'm giving ample warning to my Amagi, and he's turning to dodge them, which is great. And this also gives me some indication of where the torps came from. More than likely they're somewhere right in front of me, unless he pushed up north. It's unlikely, but I'm keeping my eyes out for any possible indication of where he is. We're losing more and more members, which is of course awkward. We're now down to 6 versus 9, which makes the game quite hard. Second volley of torps, this gave me a lot of information. This means that he did not push north, he pushed in fact south. He's still inside the cap as well. If we look at our detection circle, we can tell he is right in front of us. This is perfect. And as I said, this guy is very vulnerable because he's not using the survivability expert perk, which is something I highly recommend on pretty much all DDs, simply because if you're dead, you're useless, so gotta stay alive. Got some good damage on him, he's smoked and he fled. And note that we count all torpedoes. That was the third torpedo volley. Fubuki has 3 volleys of torps. I'm pretty sure he has a 3x3. On the Fubuki, and that was the third volley that we counted. So that means he should not have torps up quite right now, but he will have them up in a couple of seconds. Also, he left the cap. He could have turned north, but it's unlikely. In fact, it's more likely that he kept fleeing south away from us. He probably doesn't expect me to rush him, or maybe he expects me to push the smoke, but I have no interest in going that way. Instead, I'm going around the smoke on the left, because the Akizuki doesn't do well in close range. You gotta keep this in mind. If you get into a brawl, DD versus DD, my prediction turned out to be correct. He was in fact trying to flee south, and by going around the smoke, I managed to spot him at a pretty comfortable range, where I can burn him down without worrying too much about torps. Note that I'm very, very angled if you look at my ship, and that's because I am quite worried about incoming torps. Because you do not want to get into a position where a DD gets to YOLO torp you. Even if you YOLO torp him in return, trading evenly with the DD is not a good trade for you. And any sort of close range brawls is going to be in the enemy's favor. Even though your damage is great, they ultimately have such a huge maneuverability advantage that you will more than likely eat the torpedo, and you will more than likely die even if you kill them before they launch their torps. 730 meter turning circle is no joke. This ship is also slow, and this combined with the pretty sluggish rudder shift means that you turn worse than most cruisers. In fact, battleships tend to outturn you. So you have to keep this in mind when you try to fight other DDs. They will always have the advantage if you get too close to them. Sorry about my phone making noise. Although we have dealt with all the DDs, the problem is it's a 4 versus 6. Now we still have the cap advantage, which is great, and I'm trying to secure B. However, as soon as I enter B, I notice it's still contested. Instantly I turn away, because this means the Amagi that was in B has not left the cap. In fact, he is hiding behind island. So we start turning hard left, and the Amagi pops up. He was probably trying to ambush us or something similar. So instantly reacting when you see that the cap is contested, you have to keep that in mind, because being spotted 6 km away from a battleship, especially in the Akizuki, that is such a big DD, it's like almost a cruiser-sized DD, means you would be eating a ton of heavy hits. So I drop my torps on him, and I start turning away. This is not a fight I can take right now. This is not a fight I can take. The Amagi is full HP. The Pensacola, while I could kill him quite comfortably in a 1 versus 1, it would leave me open to the Amagi shells, and at this range you're not going to be dodging Amagi shells. He turns in to dodge my torpedoes as well, which is unfortunate, especially since I used my consumable to get an additional one, and the Amagi behind me is about to die. So this is a case where I have to disengage. They also both have fighter planes in the air, which means that there's constant random spotting going on. I even turn off my AA to make sure I don't get spotted by randomly shooting at the planes. Note that your concealment decreases, or your detection range increases if your AA fires at planes. So the default key is P. You press it to turn off your anti-air, and in that way you can maintain better concealment than you otherwise could. I think I might be getting plane spotted here. Yes, the plane does catch up to me. That is of course one of the downsides of the slow speed. So the last place they saw me go was north towards C. That was the last place I was spotted. So I'm gonna see if I can perhaps set up an ambush, because I need to do something drastic at this point. We are down to a 3 versus 5, and if you look at my teammates, the Monarch and the Z-23, they are completely useless still at A, the one cap that we have that isn't being threatened. Whereas this cap I'm at, or this position, I'm surrounded by battleships north and south and the Pensacola. So I'm trying to fool them into thinking that I was going north, and in the meantime, while I'm undetected, I turn around south. The hopes is that I will get into a position of cover before the planes spot me again. Perhaps even I will be able to launch my torps. But no, planes show up. Note that I instantly cancel my torps when that happened, because if I would have launched while being plane spotted, the torps would have been instantly spotted, which would have been a miss. I get behind cover just in time before they can punish me. Now I turn my AA back on, of course, because they already know where I am, so it doesn't really matter. I want to kill them to gain that spotting advantage. Now this is where I decide I need to make a play. They want to kill me. They're very greedy to kill me. My torpedo consumable is coming up, so I want to set up an ambush for them. I predictably shoot my first volley of torpedoes where they might be coming, then I use my cooldown to get another set ready, but I do not fire it yet. I play safe with this one. I get spotted, which means someone must be close. I'm proximity spotted. That's the only way that could spot me. And the Pensacola is in fact very, very close. But he is giving broadside. And at close range, cruisers that give broadside are extremely susceptible to citadels. I pop my speed boost to try to juke his shells. After killing the Pensacola, now I launch my second volley of torpedoes. And this time the Amagi cannot dodge because of how close he is. I eat a volley of torpedoes, or eat a volley of shots, but thanks to Admiral Yamamoto's kraken ability, I start healing a significant amount of damage in return. And by killing those two, I actually managed to extend or give us the point lead that we were losing quite rapidly because of the capture point disadvantage. Now you might be questioning, why did I smoke even though I was so close to them? The smoke was not meant for these two. As soon as I realized that I was probably going to kill both of them, I used my smoke because the Queen Elizabeth and the Amagi at sea would have been able to spot me and shoot me if I hadn't used the smoke. But there was a high risk of this happening. Also, there was a chance that if they shot while within spotting range of my smoke, I might be able to return fire on them while having the smoke advantage, whereas the new smoke mechanic would have worked against them. However, that did not happen, so I instantly leave the smoke and I bail. The enemy battleships saw that I just used my torps, because I killed someone with torpedoes, and they know I'm low HP. I do not want to sit in the smoke, because I expect the battleships to be pushing that smoke. So I use the speed boost and I instantly disengage. Instead, I try to go south and meet up with my team again. Just because I could take on those two alone doesn't mean I can take on the following two alone as well. That would be pushing my luck, and in general, you want to play intelligent and fairly safe, and the only reason I went for that play that I did there was mostly desperation. We needed something, we needed a play to keep us alive. And it turns out I disengaged at the very last second because an Amagi was pushing into the cap behind me and I just barely made it out. Note that I instantly repaired the shell I ate there because it started a fire. And fire, just like anti-air, increases your concealment. And if you want to stay stealthy, it's very important to repair the fires. In fact, one of the primary things you should be using your repair on destroyers is fires, because that's the one thing that greatly hinders your concealment. So if you have a fire, you kind of want to save it for that. And if you're about to get undetected, wait until you actually see your detection circle get smaller after you've fired, and only then repair. If you repair and they still get the fire on you, then you will probably die. Note though that the Monarch is in a position of chasing the North Carolina, so I start turning left here. Not only do I want to push B and contest the cap so they no longer get points or possibly even cap it, I also want to be able to get the broadside, because this Amagi needs to start angling against the Monarch soon. I assume he will soon start angling because the Monarch will start firing upon him, and in that case I want to create a crossfire. By crossfire, of course, you mean a situation where he cannot angle against both of us at the same time. And he's giving me a lot of broadside, and this is where it kicks off. Note, of course, Yamamoto reduces my reload significantly, so my DPM is, of course, disgustingly high. As you can see from this poor guy, just how much AP damage he is eating. And this is, of course, the power of having the Admiral Yamamoto captain and having the Kraken ability kick in. Not to mention, of course, the healing potential. He does start angling, so I switch to HE. In this case, since he's giving broadside, this means that the Monarch has pretty damn free shots at him and should be able to punish him significantly. However, since he's still pushing and he's not being killed, and all I see is HE fire coming his way, I can only assume that the Monarch is dumb enough to shoot HE at his broadside. And this means we're gonna have to torpedo this guy. Note that if you don't run the spotting module, you can only see people in smokes at 2 kilometers or at their firing range, or firing concealment range. However, if he runs the spotting module, he will spot me at 3 kilometers. So at 3.2, I already start accelerating. And it turns out he was using the spotting module instead of the concealment module. So at 3 kilometers, he got vision of me. But since I predicted that this was a possibility, I knew that this might happen, I started accelerating at 3.2 kilometers. So by the time he actually saw me, I was already moving, which made me a significantly harder target to hit, because a moving target will always be harder to hit than a stationary ones. And I note that I saved my torpedoes until the very last moment, because if you launch them too early, especially against someone who's coming nose in, they usually have a time to spread. And the more they spread, the larger the gap for the battleship to fit in between. The only way I was going to land 2 torpedoes on him when he came nose in was until I waited that he was pretty much point blank range. I couldn't rush him and try to torpedo him because I simply didn't have the health pool to get away with it. So hence why we waited until pretty much the last possible moment, and only then did we fire. At this point though, there's only 25 seconds left, so there's no need to secure any additional capture points, because at this point the game is quite solidly in our hands. At this point I'm probably gonna take a few pot shots at the Queen Elizabeth, because by the time his guns are turned and he's actually returning to the fire, the game will probably have ended. In fact, questionable if my shells will even have time to land, but at least I get to enjoy the Admiral Yamamoto rainbows that I'm raining down on him. And as I said that, only one shell had time to land, and the game does in fact end. But ultimately, it seemed very close to being a loss, but still able to recover it towards the end. Looking at the score screen, 158,000 damage, which is quite nice. The damage rewards are of course First Blood, Double Devastating, High Caliber, Confederate, and a Kraken. Now, what is quite amusing here is, of course, the fact that I unlocked a award that you can't get on the Akizuki without having Yamamoto. This is in fact an impossible reward to get, and that's Dreadnought. That's receiving damage exceeding 120% of your ship's normal HP. And this is an award you cannot get on the Akizuki unless you have Yamamoto and you get a Kraken. So in this sense, I thought it was pretty amusing getting this kind of reward on this ship. Looking at the detailed report, only 3000 XP, in fact, but this is something that happens when you face same or lower tiers. You tend to not get as much XP as you normally could. For example, the tier 10 commentary that I'm probably going to do, in that one I do less damage and think I have a less influence, but I get way more than 3000 XP in that one. Whereas in this one I only get 3000 XP. That's of course the disadvantage of fighting against lower or same tier ships. You don't get the same bonus XP for fighting higher tiers. That's not to say 3000 XP, base XP is a bad score, but it's something to keep in mind. Even though everyone hates being up tiered, you tend to get better rewards for being up tiered. And detailed report was, well, shells fired, let's see, main battery 433 shells, pretty even, or hits in general, pretty even between HE and AP, but AP of course deals a lot more damage, but then again that's kind of misleading in the sense that I use AP on broadsides always. The HE, the fire damage is extremely underwhelming, but ultimately it did add up, it forced some repairs, and in general it was an annoyance. Potential damage 830, not that much, but what is quite amusing is the damage received. 30k damage received. Considering this ship has a max health of 23.2k with survivability expert, this is of course the magic of Admiral Yamamoto kicking in once more. So even though I do recommend running Yamamoto on the Yamato foremost, it is extremely amusing to run on this ship. Anyway, let me rehash my recommended build for this ship, since I am using a slightly modified build on the Russian server, and that's mostly because of how many carriers there are on this server. Right, a quick rehash of the modules. Priority number 1, hull, followed by range, followed by the torpedoes, because the torpedoes is the smallest incremental increase you can get. Consumable wise, premium smoke, premium repair, premium torpedo reloader, premium speed boost, in that order of importance and value. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1, AA range, engine upgrade, faster rudder shift time, and of course concealment. Now if you do have a speed boost, I think you could run a speed boost on the Akizuki. If you do have the speed boost module or upgrade, that one is of course even better, but on the Russian server I sadly do not have that one accessible. Captain perks wise, now this is where we see some variations compared to my normal build. On the EU server I run, well, let's start with first of all my basic recommended: preventive maintenance, last stand, survivability expert, concealment expert, IFHE. That's the basic 14-point captain. And then you have 5 points you can do some shenanigans with. 2 points I would absolutely put into adrenaline rush. So the difference between my EU and Russian build is that on the EU server I run Demolition Expert. 2% fire chance with the rate of fire you have on the Akizuki is a fantastic source of increased damage, and you saw just how little fire damage I did in my previous game. I barely scratched them with fires and I barely got any fires at all, and that is of course the downside of not having Demo Expert. On the other hand, I run BFT, which is a 10% reload on the guns, aka a flat out 10% DPM increase, which is great, and it gives you 20% to AA, and Akizuki already has very good AA, so the 20% increase is actually quite significant, especially with the AA module, since you reach a 6 km range on the long aura, and the damage, as you can see, is quite impressive, especially with the flag. Even the mid-range aura has a pretty decent one. Anyway, the point here is, if you face a lot of carriers, like I do on the Russian server, BFT is highly recommended. If on the other hand you rarely if ever see any carriers like I do on the EU server, then you're perfectly fine running Demo Expert. Neither option is bad, both are very strong. Ideally I would run them both if I could afford the points, but ultimately I leave that up to you, to which thing you value more. Keep in mind though that if you don't have BFT, you can struggle a bit with carriers trying to torp you, because as I mentioned, the maneuverability on this ship is extremely weak. The turning circle is that of a cruiser, the rudder shift isn't that special, so if someone tries to cross torp you, your only defense is killing the planes before they hit you. So keep that in mind. BFT will fundamentally give you more survivability than Demo Expert can give you. Flag wise, priority number 1 is absolutely speed and detonation. Increase your fire chance, because that 1% adds a lot considering you're spamming at such a fast rate. Faster consumable cooldown and 10% AA. These are things I like. The rest is just fluff and bonus. And at this point I'm almost tempted to use the flag for healing, considering Yamamoto has been kicking in a lot on this ship. Finally, a last question. Do you guys want me to feature the Shiratsuyu? I did level the Shiratsuyu quite a bit. Well, I grinded through the Shiratsuyu to get to the Akizuki, and ultimately I think I had a pretty good run in it. Let's see if I can find it. 20 games played in the Shira, 13 kill to death ratio. So I would say I had a pretty damn good run, in the sense that I killed 13 ships for every time I died. So I thought I had a pretty good impact and a pretty good understanding of how that ship worked. And I was running the Shiratsuyu with the torpedo reload. If you guys are interested in seeing some Shiratsuyu commentaries as well, let me know in the comments. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this Akizuki commentary. And the next Akizuki commentary will be focused on how to deal with being bottom tier, aka when you face tier 9s and tier 10s. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time.